Welcome to Edukripa. I am Moksha Prada. Today we are back with another session on nutrition in plants beyond photosynthesis. In the last class, we learned about what are nutrients, what are nutrients and nutrition, and we defined what are autotrophs and heterotrophs. We came to a conclusion that plants are the only autotrophs present on Earth, and we got to know about photosynthesis process, components which help in photosynthesis, and a brief equation about how photosynthesis works. Right? Now, we'll continue with, as I have mentioned before, beyond photosynthesis. What is beyond photosynthesis? So, does the plant only produce glucose? What do you mean by does it only produce glucose? In the previous class, I said that with the equation of photosynthesis, that energy is liberated. Energy is liberated in the form of glucose. So, I want to give you a quick brainstormer. What exactly is the nutrient which we usually associate the glucose with? We associate glucose with the starch, or you can say carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is the nutrient which we usually associate the glucose or energy with. So, glucose made in photosynthesis acts as a base or acts as the base for the plant itself. Now, plants also uses minerals from soil like nitrogen to make proteins and fats. Proteins and fats are also required for the plant to function. Next, do you like this? There is a fun fact here. Nitrogen. We know that air is 70% or 73% made up of nitrogen. But through stomata, as we have said in the previous class, through stomata, plant doesn't absorb the nitrogen. It is absorbed by the roots. It is absorbed in the form of nitrates. Nitrates, what do you mean by nitrates? Nitrate is a compound of a nitrogen. Okay. Now, not all plants make their own food. This is a statement. Previously, we said that plants are autotrophs. Now we are slightly deviating from the path. We are saying that not all plants make their own food. Other mode of nutrition in plants are also there. There are parasitic plants, there are insectivorous plants, there are saprotrophic plants and symbiotic plants. Symbiotic and parasitic have a common connection. I will explain it to you later. First, let's continue with saprotrophic nutrition. Saprotrophic nutrition is a mode of nutrition where the organisms feed on dead and decaying matter. The components or the food substances which are about to be dead or getting rotten or getting spoiled, saprotrophs, here have highlighted saprotrophs. Organisms which do so are called saprotrophs. Saprotrophs are organisms which feed on dead and decaying matter. This mode of nutrition is called saprotrophic nutrition. How does these organisms exactly feed on dead and decaying matter? When they go and sit on a certain food substance, for example, bread, you may have noticed that if bread is spoiled, it will have small black dots on it. Those are bread molds. What does these bread molds have? These bread molds usually develop fungi. Okay, mushroom is a type of a fungi. Okay, many of us eat mushrooms. There are several types of mushrooms. The mushroom we consume are usually not harmful for our body. They are edible mushrooms. We have to pick it up we have to be very picky about what we choose to eat as mushrooms. Okay, these saprotrophs release enzymes to break down the food and in turn absorb nutrients. Okay, quick recap. Saprotrophic nutrition. Plants feed on dead and decaying matter. The organisms which do so are called saprotrophs. How do they exactly feed on it? They release enzymes, certain type of chemical substances, which break down the food components or nutrients and absorb nutrients. Okay, example for these saprotrophs is mushroom, bread mold, and fungi. Okay, next, living together for benefit. means living together includes two organisms. This is called symbiotic relationship. In symbiotic relationship, there are two organisms present. There are two categories present. One is a host, another one is a parasite. Okay? Plants and certain type of bacteria, this is one of the cases, or fungi help each other. What do? There is a bacteria called as rhizobium. Rhizobium is a type of a bacteria. What does rhizobium do? Rhizobium usually helps in plants absorb the nitrogen in the form of nitrates. As I told before in the previous slides, it absorbs the environmental nitrogen into it through roots in the form of nitrogen, which the bacteria called as rhizobium helps in this. Okay. For example, there is a example given in the textbook, which is organism called as lichens. Lichens include algae and fungi. Now, which is the host and which is the parasite here? This is the parasite. Let's write PAR for this for now. And this is host. So fungi gives shelter, minerals and water. In return, algae prepares the food for fungi. This is one example of symbiotic relationship. Another one which I have not mentioned in the slide is amarbel, or you can call it as cascata. If you observe a banyan tree, there are small thread-like green structures hanging down from the banyan tree. These things are amarbel or cascata. Okay, amarbel on its own cannot survive, so it clings to a huge tree. Of course, a huge tree is bound to give it a rich nutrients. It is bound to give it shelter. What does amarbel do in return? Amarbel utilizes this and grows on the tree. In return, it prepares extra food. Amarbel is usually green in color, which it helps in extra photosynthesis process. It is just like a add-on feature for a plant, for a huge tree. Okay. Now, next we'll continue with. You can wonder, there are so many plants growing around us. Does soil run out of nutrients? Or why does soil not run out of nutrients? As I said before, in the roots of the plant, there is a bacteria called as rhizobium, which usually helps in conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates, which is utilized by the plant to make protein. Nitrogen is usually associated with protein synthesis. Okay. Whenever, even in this, let this be a general knowledge kind of thing. Nitrogen is usually associated with protein synthesis. Okay. Now, what happens in some type of plants when these rhizobium are less in number? Usually farmers, what they do, they add manure and fertilizers to add nutrients. Nutrients as such of what? Phosphorus, potassium, and etc. Okay. Nitrogen fixation by rhizobium, as I already told. This is also a kind of or example for symbiotic relationship. Okay. So, what do farmers do? You may have seen, or you may notice, or you can search this. Farmers do something called as crop rotation. In one season, they grow some kind of crops in which the nutrients of the soil deplete, and in some other seasons, they grow plants or crops like dals and pulses. Dals and pulses usually help in growth of these rhizobium bacteria, which in turn helps the soil, which in turn helps the nutrition of the soil getting replenished. So crop rotation is one of the method. Okay. Next, there is one more category of plants which we have to discuss. Those are insectivores. Insectivores. Let's take this word insectivorous and split it. You may have heard about herbivorous, carnivorous, omnivorous. Insectivorous is the slave. In terms of plants, insectivorous feed on insects. Okay? Why do they feed on insects? Because some plants have less ability to convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates. The living organisms other than plants are rich in nitrogen. So, consuming these insects helps the plant replenish the nitrogen deficiency. Usually, insectivorous plants are attractive to the insect. Insect thinks of it as some plant which is can be used to suck nectar. In turn, it usually turns out it may be an insectivorous plant. Insectivorous plants have structure adapted in such a way that when insects come and sit, they usually trap it and suck the nutrients out of it in case killing the sow insect. For example, pitcher plant and Venus flytrap. As the name has been given, Venus flytrap, it usually traps flies, which is rich in nitrogen, to replenish its nitrogen. So, points to ponder. Till now, in this chapter, what did we learn? In this session, we learned that plants make proteins and fats too, other than in the photosynthesis process, as it makes energy in the form of carbohydrate. It also makes proteins and fats also. Some plants depend on others for foods. So these type of plants are also autotrophic, but in some of the cases like insectivorous plants or saprotrophic mode of nutrition, or in the symbiotic relationship, in case of parasitic plants, they depend on others for food. Saprotrophs feed on decaying matter. Symbiosis means partnership. As I told you, it includes host and parasite, where parasite depends upon the host for shelter and nutrition. In return, it prepares the food and gives back to the host. Soil's nutrients can be replenished naturally, also by the farmers artificially. By adding fertilizers, of course. Okay. Now I have few questions for you. Which mineral is needed for plant to synthesize proteins? Okay. Please comment down these answer to these questions in the comments. So this, let's see. Give one example for symbiotic plant relationship. I explained it to you already. Let's recall your memory a little bit to know. How do farmers naturally replenish nitrogen in soil? I gave you a name of a technique. Let's recall if you give a let's see if you give a detailed explanation for this. Okay. Thank you guys for watching this video. This was all about nutrition in plants. See you in the next video. Bye.